Okay. Welcome everyone back to a very, very special edition of The Future is Female. Gabrielle Ducharme joined here, as always, by my co-host, Nicole Pinter. We've got a really exciting show for all of you. It is currently March 17th. And that's right, folks. It means March Madness is officially here. It has been 2 years since we've been able to have a conversation like this. So we're doing our Future is Female special edition March Madness episode. We're going to break down both men's and women's college basketball to show you guys what you can expect going in to the next 3 weeks of just nonstop hoops. Nicole, how excited are you that we are finally back breaking down all of March Madness?
Feels so good to just even have a bracket in front of me again. Everyone loves brackets. Everyone loves filling out brackets. It doesn't matter what you put in front of them, they will fill out a bracket. And it's just so fun to be able to talk about the upsets and, talking ourselves into which 12 seed will upset a 5 seed and 11-6, so on. It's just, it's great. It's great to be back.
I know I find myself bleeding with my heart more than my head, and I shouldn't do that because I am a sports journalist and I cover some of these teams and I work for some of these teams. I should not be doing that, but I still do. I'm still gonna pick, whatever. I'm still gonna pick UCLA to win and get out of the first round, even though they have a freaking play-in game in 2 days, because that's what my heart's telling me to do. It's okay though. It's okay. It's totally fine.
Is it though? Is it?
I'll be in a puddle of tears for 12 hours, and then I'll go back to my bracket, and then I'll realize that I shouldn't have picked SDSU to lose in the first round because they're going to the Sweet 16 in a week and a half, and it's fine. It's okay.
We'll talk about it. We'll get to that game. Yeah. We'll get to the UCLA Michigan State game and see if they even get out of the first round.
Yeah, not like I have been going to the Sweet 16 or anything.
Might break Gabby's heart on the way, but we'll do it.
No, yeah, and I think one heart that will not be broken this year possibly is Nicole's, because Michigan is one of the number one seeds in the tournament. It's not going to be an easy road for them to get there, but out of all the number one seeds, I think I would love to see Michigan win it. Of course, we're getting into intricacies that we need to get into a little bit later on. This is on the men's side. We also have the women's side, which is going to be extremely competitive. There's a lot of Pac-12 schools on the women's side of things. There's a lot of potential upsets as well. To be honest with you, though, the women's side usually has the schools at the top end up there in the end. UConn, Stanford, Baylor, Notre Dame, all of those schools usually end up somewhere around the Elite Eight or the Final Four, because on the women's side of things, those programs are just always going to be consistent. They're always going to be winners. Those coaches do not mess around when it comes to March Madness. So it's going to be interesting to see. Of course, though, Nicole, we got to start off. It sounds like we got to start off with the women's bracket. Do you want to share your screen with us so that we can see what you have going on the women's side?
Absolutely. And enjoy my background of Ahsoka Tano while you're at it. Okay, so the women's bracket, admittedly, I haven't watched as much women's basketball as I wish I could have, especially on the Pac-12 side, because most of those games were on a stream that I either couldn't access, or I know I'm making up excuses, but I still have some Pac-12 love in my bracket. So I'll start in the Alamo. So let me go in. So I got Stanford. I think Stanford is... I'll tell you right now, they're going to the Final Four. I don't see anyone in this region beating them. Actually, this is probably my tamest region of the bracket, because I do have some upsets. But yeah, I got Stanford, I got Oklahoma State. I just don't think Wake Forest can be enough. I got Missouri State and Arkansas. My only real upset on this side is I like Missouri State over Arkansas. And a lot of that has to do with their defense. 56.9 points per game. Admittedly, weaker conference, sure, but it's March. You never know what's going to happen. So I actually like Missouri State over Arkansas. Here I got Oregon and Georgia, and then Northwestern and Louisville. Northwestern UCF was another matchup. I was kind of like, I could talk myself into UCF, but Northwestern had a really good run in the Big Ten tournament. And I think they're still kind of riding on that high a little bit, and I think they'll get to the next round, but they run into Louisville and it won't matter. Then
they'll run into Louisville. It'll
hey,
be fine. They'll run into Asia Durr's old team. It'll be great.
yeah, it'll be fine. And then we end up with a great matchup here in Stanford and Louisville. And I still think Stanford's a little bit too much. Pac-12 is just such a battle-tested conference. Wow, I was mincing the words there, but such a battle-tested conference. And you'll see in my bracket, I think a lot of teams will benefit from that. They'll have an advantage there. Gabby, any thoughts on the Alamo region of my bracket?
It's fascinating to see, somebody like Missouri State being like a 5 seed, right? Like you don't think about Missouri State being one of the dominant schools in women's college basketball. If you had told me, hey, Missouri State is playing against UC Davis in the first round, I probably would have said, oh, UC Davis has to be the 5 seed because they're from the bigger conference, right? They're not from the Power 5 conference, but they're from a bigger conference on the West Coast. They play against schools like UC Irvine. They play against schools like UC Santa Barbara. They play against really solid basketball schools year in and year out. So, I mean, to be honest with you, the most shocking part, I think, is the fact that Missouri State is a 5 seed, because you just don't think of you just really don't think of a school like that, dominating, I guess, in women's college basketball. And then, of course, I can't fight you on the Stanford bet. I cannot fight you on Haley Jones and Lexi Hall, bringing them all the way to the Elite Eight. And then on the other side of things, I can't fight Louisville either. I'm not a big fan of Louisville as a program. I haven't loved Louisville since Brittany Griner was in the Final Four back in like 2014. And they had this point guard, I'm blanking on her name right now, but they had this point guard who essentially stared her down and started getting all tough with her. And Brittany Griner just kind of looked down at her and was like, hi. Yeah, hi. Since then, Brittany Griner's been the number 1 overall WNBA draft pick, won a couple of WNBA titles, and she's a bona fide superstar. I don't remember the other girl's name, if I'm being honest with y'all. But that's the magic of March, right? You remember their name for like 2 weeks and then it disappears forever. Unless you're like Sister Jean at Loyola Chicago, then your name is forever erected in history. So yeah, I agree with most of your picks. I do think there's a chance Oregon upsets Georgia. I really, really do.
Okay.
I do. I'm pretty sure I have Oregon actually upsetting Georgia in that like round of 32 or whatever. I don't think I have them getting past the Sweet 16 though, because of just how proven Oregon is as a team and like as a program and stuff. I know they don't have Sabrina, they don't have Satu on their team this year, but they still have a lot of talented players. They're a pretty young team. So overall, I think I agree with most of your picks.
Okay. I'll be interested to see yours. I definitely, I can't go as in depth as you, but I think it will be fun. This is a fun challenge. Always fun time of year. All right. So I go to my Riverwalk side. I mean, it's Paige Buchers, excuse me. How do you pronounce her last name? I'm sorry.
Paige Beckers.
Beckers. Oh my God. I was so off. Beckers. Jeez. Can you tell I haven't watched a UConn game this year? Gosh. Crime against humanity on my part. All right.
I was about to say a little bit of a crime against humanity there, but you don't necessarily have to watch Paige Beckers in a full-on game just to know that she's really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, even just highlights tell the story. So I got UConn. You can already tell I got UConn going to the Final Four, and further. Syracuse over South Dakota State. Again, this is another tame side. I think when we go down, it's when my bracket gets a little more fun and interesting. So UConn, Syracuse in the round of 32. I got Iowa, Kentucky. I think Kentucky beats Iowa. Even though the Big Ten on men's and women's side was a pretty good conference this year. I still think Iowa's too much. I got UConn, Kentucky. It took everything in my heart and soul to pick Michigan because they had such a good start to the season. And then, I mean, was part of it the COVID pause or, sometimes that just happens to really good teams. And I'm so bad. Why didn't I look up her name? But they had a player who scored 50 points in in a losing effort to Ohio State. And they're even then, that was kind of the point where things sort of changed. They lost to Northwestern in the Big Ten tournament. And FGCU will be a really tough test for them. And I was really tempted to pick FGCU. And I think FGCU could really win that matchup just because of how much Michigan has struggled lately. Still made it to the tournament, still a 6 seed. But based on how the season started, it looked like they could be a 4 or 5 seed. I still biases. I still have them going ahead, but I have them losing to Tennessee. And I think Tennessee could win that handily, honestly. Then Virginia Tech over Marquette, Baylor over Jackson State. And then I got Baylor going to, why am I blanking on this? The Sweet 16. But I think Baylor beats Tennessee in a really close matchup that I'm still tempted. I still could change my mind and take Tennessee on this later. But I got UConn Baylor out of this in the Elite Eight.
Yeah, I think it's hard to pick upsets. It's harder to pick upsets in women's basketball than it is in men's, because part of the reason the programs in women's basketball will dominate for a certain amount of years is because the players actually stay at their programs for 3-4 years at a time. Sabrina stayed at Oregon for 4 years. Paige Beckers will most likely stay at UConn for at least 3 years. At Stanford, Haley Jones is probably going to be there for 4 years. So when you're looking at upsets and stuff, I think it's in part because there is just not as much turnover in women's basketball as there is in men's basketball. There's a lot more consistency. So I feel like that's in part what makes women's basketball so great, is that you get to see those stars come back every single year and you get to see them develop and grow. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. 3 years ago, when Satu Sabali was a freshman at Oregon, she was named like the all Pac-12 freshman first team. I really didn't think much of her. I could not have predicted that within 2 years of that, she was going to be the number 2 overall pick in the WNBA draft, behind her once in a generation, like teammate Sabrina Ionescu. But that's what's fun about women's hoops, and that's what's fun about March Madness. And Nicole, to answer your little question or whatever about the Michigan player, it was Naz. It looks like it was Naz Hillman who set the Michigan scoring record, 50 points in a game. And she did that in a loss to the arch rival, of course, Ohio State. The Ohio State eyes, rather than Buckeyes, because we're on radio, we don't cuss on here. But it was in a loss, unfortunately. And I'm honestly, I'm kind of shocked that you didn't pick Michigan in that game, just because I'm going to be curious to see what happens with Tennessee this year. Tennessee hasn't been super good in several years now. But let's see, what break it down for us. What was your decision, I guess, with this matchup?
It was so tough. I think obviously Michigan hoops is on both sides is what I know best. And their end to the season was just really rough. And I think FGCU is sort of like a build-up kind of thing, but I still think FGCU gives them a run for their money. But I think Tennessee has a nicer matchup in Middle Tennessee, with all due respect to Middle Tennessee State. And I think the transition into that next game, the round of 32, I think Tennessee has the advantage, despite them actually being pretty similar teams in a lot of the ways. But I think Tennessee could have an off day and win this game. Let me put it that way. And that hurts me to say, because of course I want Michigan to go ahead. I don't think they'd beat Baylor in the next round, though. It's hard. Obviously, I won't be mad if Michigan wins this matchup, but
Baylor's basketball legacy is it's scary. They won it. They're technically the defending national champions right now, because the last time they won was 2019. That was the last time we played a March Madness tournament. As much as everybody wants to wish that Oregon would be the defending national champs right now with Sabrina Ionescu, they're not. That's just the fact of the matter. So I'm going to be curious to see how Baylor looks during the tournament as well, because back in 2019 when they won, one of their best players, I'm blanking on her name right now. Her first name was Lauren, but one of their best players on that national championship team is now in the WNBA. She was a junior at the time when they won. And so I'm going to be curious to see how they bounce back going into this tournament. And then I'm also going to be curious to see how UConn does. UConn is young. Like, UConn's really young. Paige Beckers is like the thing that has been literally dragging that team this whole year. Now, granted, they're UConn. They have Gina Auriemma. So, like, going like 30-5 for them is like considered a disappointment. Like, let's be real.
Which is incredible. And by the way, hopefully Gina Auriemma is on the court at some point. He tested positive for COVID this past week. I don't think he'll be on the court for the round of 64. Hopefully by round of 32 he's back, but let me see the dates. Yeah, it could be Sweet 16. We're not sure.
Can you click on UConn really quickly?
Kind of can. I can click on the matchup thing.
Okay, yeah. So UConn went 24-1 on their season, and their one loss, I think, was to like Stanford.
Arkansas.
Their one loss was to Arkansas. Okay, yeah. So notable victories: they beat South Carolina, who's another number 1 seed. We're gonna go over that in a little bit. They lost to Arkansas. They won at Tennessee. They won at Marquette, and they won at Villanova. Like, most programs in NCAA women's hoops, this would be their best season in history. Not even close will they ever come again to that. For UConn, this is just another season. It's just
exactly. It's like kind of underwhelming.
Paige Beckers is like not an anomaly to be a superstar freshman, right? Like, Brianna Stewart was a superstar freshman. Katie Lou Samuelson was a superstar freshman. Maya Moore was a superstar freshman. Paige Beckers is now a superstar freshman. She's just another in the long litany of players that have come from the program. So I'm gonna be curious to see how the young UConn team does. But let's go down to the bottom half of your bracket to see what things look like.
Try to avoid who I picked as a winner. It's interesting you say that as we get to the Final Four. Okay. So if we go to the Hemisphere region, which every time in the selection show they were saying this, I was like, why did they keep saying Hemisphere? I'm like, what am I missing? It was Hemisphere. I was so confused. All right. So South Carolina, obviously overwhelming favorite in this region. This is where I have interesting picks, is these two sides. So I got South Carolina, Oregon State, pretty standard. I have Stephen F. Austin over Georgia Tech. And again, a lot of why I'm picking these are defense. I'm kind of ignoring the verse top 25. In this case, it's easy to ignore, but I am ignoring the top 25 thing here because unless you're in the Pac-12, I'm not really concerned about your first top 25 or even in conference record for that matter. But again, defense is a lot of the reason I'm picking some of these upsets. Beating Jackson State by 30 and losing to Houston only by 2, I think is impressive. 14-0 in conference. I want to spice it up a bit. I'm going Stephen F. Austin, West Virginia, and then I still have West Virginia winning. I think their Cinderella run ends. South Carolina, West Virginia. I got South Carolina. Then down to the ladder, Texas and UCLA. And then I got North Carolina over Bama. Call me an SEC non-believer, what you want, because you'll see this in the men's too. Or just a non-Alabama believer, that's fine too, because you'll see that. But I got North Carolina and Maryland. Maryland, who won the Big Ten, got them over North Carolina. But another kind of upset, again, Pac-12 bias, call it what you want. I got UCLA. Because even with their, if you want to say, somewhat less than stellar expected season, they're in the Pac-12. They're 12-4 in conference. Opponent 58.1 opponents points per game. They're at 72. I think this is a really good matchup between UConn and South Carolina. I still think South Carolina is too much, but I do really like UCLA out of this region.
There you go. I think I have a couple more upsets as well, actually, in this region. I kind of went with my heart in this region rather than my head. It eventually peters out, of course, but yeah, you can't bet against Asia Wilson's alma mater. You cannot bet against Dawn Staley either, like the head coach of South Carolina. Fun fact, actually, about Dawn Staley, she played in I'm pretty sure she actually played in the first ever WNBA game for the New York Liberty back in 97. So she's a part of basketball history, which is kind of cool. But when you look at a team like South Carolina and the amount of consistency they've had over the last couple of years, they won the national title in 2018, which put all of them, put that entire program on the map. They have superstars now across the WNBA. Wilson is by far the most well-known. My heart hurts to say that they probably will beat UCLA. That hurts my heart. That truly hurts my heart to say that. I followed UCLA so closely this year, but yeah, I think I mostly agree with what you have bracket wise. I'm not as high on West Virginia though. I think they may lose in the round of 64. Just because like I think they were a solid team. But when you look at a program like Lehigh, I mean, shoot, Lehigh didn't play that many games, but it's March, so why not? They're also 1-3 against top 25 opponents. You know, I don't know. I think Lehigh could have some fun with it and upset them in the round of 64. So other than that, I think it pretty much peters out. The big dogs are going to end up on top because, like we said, with the programs just kind of leveling out and being super consistent for 4 or 5 years at a time, you have the same players that come in together and stay together for their entire college careers. There's just a lot less turnover than in men's college basketball. So Nicole, what about, let's see, what's your other side?
There we go. Okay. So in the Mercado region, still mostly standard, probably. Yeah, it wasn't as fun as I was probably hyping it up to be. It's really the Hemisphere region that I think is more interesting. NC State, they're sort of the newcomers to the number 1 seed, like South Carolina, UConn, and Stanford have all been here before. NC State, this is like their first time in, like, I want to say 30 some years being in the number 1 seed or having this high of a seed. So I like NC State. Again, Pac-12 bias. I like Wazoo over South Florida. I think Washington State is more battle tested. I think they can take down South Florida. And 8-9 matchups are so tough to pick. Like 9/8, I feel like happens more times than not on both sides, men's and women's. And then, excuse me, Gonzaga and like Baylor, they're having a heck of a year. In Michigan, all these teams on both sides of the ball. I like Gonzaga over Belmont, Gonzaga, Indiana. And then the Big Ten was a pretty good conference this year for women's basketball. I like Indiana over Gonzaga. Down to this half of the bracket, I like Rutgers, Arizona. But I think, again, Pac-12, I like Arizona a lot. I think Arizona's in the Elite Eight. A&M, of course, for Iowa State, but I think Arizona's too much. So I got NC State, Arizona over here.
There you go. You got the number 1 and number 3 seeds in the conference. I agree with you on the Arizona side. I watched Arizona play. Ari McDonald's really good. I'm not betting against Ari McDonald in this tournament, folks. She's in her final run with the Wildcats. It's their first time in the NCAA tournament in a couple of decades. So this team has a lot to prove. So I agree with you on that front. It looks like, so what, of course, what is your final 4?
All number 1 seeds. I got Stanford, South Carolina, UConn, NC State. Yeah, it's kind of fun in the beginning, and then it's kind of, the more things change, more things stay the same. I really like UConn this year, and it's mostly because of Paige. This is a game that could go into overtime because they like to do that in the Final Four. Particularly on UConn's side, I think this one ends in their favor. 70-68 UConn over Stanford. That's my bracket.
There you go. That is your bracket. Wow. So, I mean, but like we said, the reason why women's hoops is a lot harder to pick upsets is because consistency matters in your program. In men's hoops, the dominant programs, the Dukes, the North Carolinas, the Villanova a little bit maybe, but like the Kentuckys especially, players come in and out faster than I can snap my fingers, right? There's so much turnover. And I think that's part of the reason why a lot of our blue blood programs that, we've come to know so well are not in the tournament this year on the men's side. I think consistency matters. I think being able to mold and gel together over a long period of time really matters. Of course, I'm going to share my side for the women's tournament. Hang on, I'm going to share my screen with y'all. Okay, so I'm going to start in the Alamo region. Of course, I've got Stanford upsetting, like not upsetting, but beating the 16 seed. I mean, it's not much of a question as to why. Then I've got Oklahoma State defeating Wake Forest. I think Oklahoma State just lines up better to win this ball game. Defensively, they give up, only 61, almost about 62 points per game. And then I've got UC Davis actually upsetting Missouri State. The reason why is in part because even though UC Davis didn't get to have as long of a season, I think UC Davis comes from the tougher conference because they have to play against schools like UC Irvine. They have to play against schools like, like Weber State. They have to play, in basically the Big Sky Conference. And then going down from there, I have Arkansas beating Wright State. I just think the SEC is such a dominant basketball conference, so I think that makes sense. Oregon and South Dakota. This is my Pac-12 heart, really kind of pulling at my heartstrings. I got Oregon winning. I think part of me still thinks that Oregon is like still the dominant team they were a year ago and is just wishing that team had a chance to play in the NCAA tournament right now. But I still have Oregon winning. I have Georgia beating Drexel, so not a lot of upsets past that point. Northwestern UCF, I actually have UCF winning, in part because when you look at UCF's like schedule and things like that, their opponent points per game, they only give up 50 points a game. Wow. They're really, really good defensively. In conference, they were 12-2 on the season. I think they also had some stoppage due to COVID-19, which, many people did. But then I have Louisville beating Marist State. And then I have Stanford defeating Oklahoma State. I have UC Davis defeating Arkansas because why not? I feel like I want to have one Cinderella story. I want to have a couple of Cinderella stories in there just for fun, even though it's probably going to bust my entire bracket. I have UC Davis making it all the way to Sweet 16 just because I haven't seen UC Davis's name as well, like in the tournament in such a long time. And then I have Stanford, destroying them, going to the Elite Eight. Oregon, I have them upsetting Georgia and actually getting all the way to the Sweet 16. They're going to face off against Louisville. Because I'm not a huge fan of Louisville, and when I look at a matchup like this, I think Oregon is coming from the tougher conference. So I kind of ignore like the record and stuff like that. I really do think that Oregon is is coming from the tougher conference. You look at who they have to play. Louisville played NC State. They lost to them both times. Oregon also has the experience with Coach Kelly Graves. They've been to the Final Four before. I know Louisville's been there as well, but I think Oregon makes it all the way to the Elite Eight. Yeah. What do you think of my my Alamo region, Nicole?
So mostly the same. I do like Oregon over Georgia and Louisville. I think you'll probably get that one right. My only real comment is California bias. No, I'm just kidding. But I do like the UC Davis pick a lot. I actually do like that pick a lot. I don't necessarily know if I have them beating Arkansas in that matchup. No. But I really like the guts.
I was about to say, I love having a little bit of guts with my bracket. I think I have a bit more guts with the men's basketball bracket just because there's more chances to pick upsets and stuff. Heading over to the River Rock region, though, of course, at the top, I'm not betting against Paige Beckers. The freshman phenom is a stud, folks. She's an absolute stud. But I heard somebody say it best just a couple days ago. Superstars are made in March. You can be a great player in the regular season. Your legacy is cemented in March. So what you do there matters more than anything else that you do November to late February. I'm excited to see how Paige Beckers creates her legacy in March starting this year. A lot of pressure on the freshman though. A lot of pressure on her. I'm not jealous of her at all right now. South Dakota State, Syracuse. I actually have South Dakota State winning. It's an 8-9 matchup, and a lot of times in 8-9 matchups, it feels like the 9 seed has just about as good of a shot at winning. It's probably the easiest upset to pick. Iowa, Central Michigan. I have Iowa winning that one. Kentucky, Idaho State. I'm going to go with the Wildcats. The SEC is one of the best conferences in the country. One of the number one overall seeds literally comes from the SEC in South Carolina. You also look at this matchup. Where are we at? Kentucky, Idaho State. Kentucky just has everything. They just have the better record across the board. They had to play 11 games against a top 25 opponent this year, and they went almost 500. That's honestly, it's almost like unheard of. You got Tennessee in the tournament too. You got South Carolina. Kentucky has had their work cut out for them this year. So I think they do get out of the round of 64. And then going down a little bit, I have Michigan beating Florida Gulf Coast, and then Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, which is an interesting matchup. Middle Tennessee State and Tennessee in-state, like not rivals, but like in-state foes. I have Michigan and Tennessee in the round of 32, and then I also have Tennessee winning. Virginia Tech, Marquette, I have Marquette winning that one. I think in terms of like a 7-10 matchup where there could be an upset, I think Marquette could get there. Marquette went 14-4 in conference, which is a very hard thing to do, especially in like women's hoops. Virginia Tech only went 8-8, and I think they're in pretty, similar conferences and stuff. They beat Villanova. They had to play against UConn 3 times because of the conference that they're in. So I think they went through a gauntlet of a conference, and to say that 3 of your 4 losses came against UConn, pretty darn good. And then Baylor, Jackson State, I have Baylor winning pretty handily. From there, I have Tennessee and Baylor playing against one another in the Sweet 16. And then UConn, Iowa, I have UConn winning, going to the Elite Eight, and then I also have Baylor going to the Elite Eight. So the only discrepancy here in this, this quote unquote like Final Four of the upper region is Oregon. I think Oregon could go all the way to the Elite Eight.
Yeah, and like I said, I really like that Oregon pick. The pick that out of these interests me the most is Iowa over Kentucky. I like South Dakota State over Syracuse. I think you're right about the 8-9. Marquette over Virginia Tech's interesting too, but I like your reasoning. What with Iowa, Kentucky? Why Iowa over Kentucky? What does it for you?
So I'm gonna pull up the bracket thing right here or whatever. I think honestly, I think it's the amount that Iowa scores. Like Iowa puts up almost 90 points a game. I'm pretty sure they lead the nation in points per game scoring. When you have an offense as dominant as that, I don't think you can win a national championship off it, but I think you can squeak through and win 2-3 games in the tournament. I'm pretty sure I think her name's Caitlin Clark. I'm pretty sure she also plays on Iowa. And she's expected to be a top WNBA draft pick. So that's also another reason. I really think I'm actually looking up her name right now. I should have known this before we started recording, but that's okay.
It's okay. I didn't even know Paige Beckers. I couldn't pronounce her last name. I'm terrible.
So Caitlin Clark is one of the best freshmen in the entire nation on Iowa. She is another version of Paige Beckers. She just doesn't have quite as much hype because she wasn't as well known on social media her senior year of high school. Like, if I'm being honest with you, part of the reason why Paige Beckers is so magical is because Slam Magazine jumped on that and has held on to that like no other ever since Paige was like a junior in high school. Caitlin Clark did not have as much hype coming in, but Clark, they're saying literally in an article right here, Clark could possibly be the best freshman in the entire nation for women's basketball. I'm not betting against that when it comes to the Sweet 16. I'm not betting against that, I should say, when it comes to the round of 32. So but then I eventually have Beckers defeating Clark, in the Sweet 16 to go to the Elite Eight. Moving down, of course, trying to scroll past that so we don't see that. Moving down to the other side of things, South Carolina. This is in the Hemisphere region. Such an interesting name for a region. South Carolina, I have defeating Mercer. Oregon State, Pac-12 bias. I'm going to go with the Oregon State Beavers, especially because there's no ASU in the tournament this year. Georgia Tech versus Stephen F. Austin. I actually have SF Austin winning this one. I'm pretty sure you also picked SF Austin to win that one. West Virginia versus Lehigh. I actually have Lehigh winning. I don't have much of a reasoning for this pick. I just love the idea of Lehigh getting out of the round of 64 because I don't think their women's team has been to the tournament in a very long time. So that's more so just like from the heart that I love Lehigh as a program and I want them to get out. It's probably one of my only picks where it's like that's just pure heart. There's no logic, rhyme, or reason to it whatsoever. Texas versus Bradley. Some of those picks. Exactly. It's not fun if you don't. Texas versus Bradley. I have Texas coming out. And then UCLA versus Wyoming. Of course, I'm going to pick my Bruins, Southern California baby. I'm not betting against Corey Close or Michaela Onyenwere in the NCAA tournament. And then Alabama, North Carolina. I also have North Carolina in that upset. I think SEC's gotten a lot of love in this tournament, so I'm going to switch gears and give the ACC a little bit of love. Maryland, Mount St. Mary's. I've never heard of Mount St. Mary's. Sorry, but I'm going with Maryland. I'm going with the Big Ten champions. Thank you very much.
That's fair. That's, yeah.
I don't know what Mount St. Mary's is. And just watch. A week from now on our show, I'll probably be like, oh, yeah, Mount St. Mary's defeated Maryland. And now I know all there is to know about their basketball program. Anyways, South Carolina, Oregon State. I have South Carolina eventually winning. Stephen F. Austin and Lehigh, because I have two upsets in there. I have Lehigh once again. Total, like, going with my heart. Lehigh is going to get their you-know-what kicked. I meant to pick South Carolina right there. They're going to get their you-know-what's kicked in the Sweet 16, but it's going to be great. UCLA, Maryland in the Sweet 16, like down below in the lower half of the region. I think UCLA is going to beat Maryland. And then going over to the other side, North Carolina State. Nope, not betting against them. Washington State, South Florida. I'm going to go with Wazoo. They're the more battle-tested team coming from the Pac-12 conference. It's also one of the first times in like several decades that Washington State's actually made the NCAA tournament. Being in a gauntlet like the Pac-12, not being the best spot for recruitment, being right near Oregon, UW, UCLA, ASU, U of A, you're just not going to get the cream of the crop when it comes to recruits. So I'm really happy that Washington State did get out of there. And then Gonzaga, Belmont, I have the Zags getting out. Indiana, VCU, I have Indiana. Rutgers, BYU, I have Rutgers winning pretty much with ease. I don't see mid-major BYU giving them much competition. Stony Brook and Arizona, the only thing I know Stony Brook University for is that somebody from my high school swims on the swim team there. That's pretty much it. I know all there is to know about Arizona basketball because of the Pac-12, going with Ari McDonald and the crew down south. Iowa State and Texas A&M, I have them eventually making it to the Sweet 16, or to the round of 32, I should say. I have Iowa State beating Michigan State and Texas beating Troy. Pretty sure Troy is the name of a high school in Southern California, so I'm not sure if it's the high school or the college that they're talking about here. Then going on from there, I'm questioning this one because I don't think I should be doubting number 1 seed NC State, but my Pac-12 heart wants Washington State to go to the Sweet 16. So, yeah, Nicole, your facial expression kind of says it all.
I mean, again, I love the heart. I love the guts in these picks, but bro.
I think I'm going to change it to North Carolina State because, like, I genuinely do think NC State's probably going to win. But, like, I'm not going to be upset if I'm wrong. But then you still have them
losing to the next round.
Yeah. Because why not?
Okay. The fact that I could win this bracket challenge purely because Gabby is going, why not, like 7 times is just spectacular. So if I do win this, just know it's like not as much based on my knowledge. It's more based on Gabby. Go, yeah, why not? Like, maybe I won't win the whole thing.
Fine, I'll change it. There we go.
No,
North
it's
Carolina
fine.
State.
No, it's fine.
North Carolina State will make it to the Elite Eight because I'm a smart person who knows women's basketball and I'm not an idiot. Arizona, I think, is going to go to the Elite Eight. Yeah. I don't know if both UCLA and Arizona are going to make it from the Elite Eight to the Final Four. So probably going to be South Carolina. Let's be real. Probably going to be South Carolina and NC State both. I just want one Pac-12 school to make it to the darn Final Four. Let's be real. I think
it could be Arizona or UCLA. I think you're outside of Stanford, and I think you're right. And I don't think either of those are like you're really having Washington State beat NC State. You know, like I was chastising you for that. I think those are both like reasonable picks. You know, even if it's your heart. But I think those are reasonable picks.
So in the Final Four, I wish I could do like South Carolina / UCLA because I'm struggling with who to pick there. In the Final Four, I've of course
change your mind. This is fine.
Yeah, I've of course got Stanford. I've got South Carolina on the Hemisphere / Alamo and then I've got UConn playing against Arizona. I have an all Pac-12 matchup for the national title game. I don't think that's how it's going to work out. It's probably going to be Beckers versus Jones. I think the score is going to be about the same. I think the score is going to be roughly 72-68. I think Stanford will win it all. It's been a while since Stanford's won the national championship, and Tara Vanderveer just hit 1,000 career wins this year. So, yeah, I'm going to pick the Stanford Cardinal to win it all. I'm not betting against the West Coast elite. I'm not betting against Lexi Hull. Not betting against Haley Jones. I'm not betting against Fran Believy, thank you very much. My favorite sequence this entire year, my favorite highlight was when one of the announcers, I think it was actually Kate Scott, she was calling Cal versus Stanford earlier on this year, and Fran Believy got the steal, and it was, Fran Believy, you better believe it, baby! She slam dunked the basketball. If you've ever seen Fran Believy slam dunk a basketball on TV, let me tell you, it does not do it justice. You got to see it in real life to really get the full picture. I saw it in real life at the Pac-12 tournament last year when Believy was only a freshman. And what they'll do is during warm-ups, Stanford will crowd around like the arc, the three-point arc, and Believy will take the ball and she'll slam it down. And as she's slamming it down, the whole team jumps with her. And then they all collapse down into like their little huddle thing or whatever. Like the amount of hype that you see surrounding that, you can't bet against that. You can't bet against a team that has that kind of chemistry on court that's being led by like two sophomores and a junior that got moved from San Francisco at the beginning of the year because they couldn't actually like play. Like we were not allowed to play in California, so they went to Las Vegas to play. I'm not betting against that. So yeah, I've got Stanford winning it all over UConn. I've got Tara Vanderveer winning another national title. That's what I've got. You're on mute.
All right. Those interesting. So we kind of still end up in the same place, you and I, but the upsets are interesting. Yeah, and the women's tournament, I think it'll still be so much fun, I think, regardless. You can still join our bracket tournament challenge. I'll put in link in the description below because this is, God, I'm going to sound like a YouTuber now because this is going to go straight to YouTube. Like and subscribe, but we're not done yet. But Gabby, any final notes on the women's tournament?
I do have one final note. I'm going to share my screen one more time. Call it the women's tournament all you want. But at the same time, if we're going to call it the women's tournament, we will also normalize calling the men's tournament the men's tournament. We will not be calling it the tournament and the women's tournament. We're going to follow what Ari Chambers has to say. Ari Chambers works for Bleacher Report. She's one of Forbes 30 under 30 this year. She created a brand called Highlight Her, which essentially it's essentially a movement to highlight women athletes who are making a difference and women in sports for making a difference. Normalize saying, quote, men's basketball when referring to men's basketball. Y'all easily say women's tournament, women's Final Four. You seem to insist on making the distinction. Here's a thought. Give us the same respect and put men's when it's men's tournament, etc. Men's National Basketball Association, Women's National Basketball Association. Stop putting the gender only in front when you're talking about women's basketball. That's my final thought on it for this time. I love March Madness. I am excited for it, but it's time that we start giving both tournaments the respect they deserve, because I think you and me are just as excited for both tournaments. So that's my final thought on it. Moving over, of course, we've got a men's tournament as well to break down. Nicole, do you want to break it down for us? What is going on with your men's tournament side? I expect to see many an upset, and I expect to see Michigan will be winning it all at the end, if you have anything to say about it.
Well, you're right. But how could I not? We'll probably talk about this a little more on our show because we are I'm personally running short of time, so I'll run through the bracket. We'll do final say and whatnot. Okay, so we go to the West. I'm questioning Gonzaga's conference the same as everyone else, but I still think Gonzaga's a really good team, and I think they're going to go far. This Oklahoma-Missouri matchup is one I go back and forth for. If I'm betting on it, this is a game I would personally avoid the most out of the 8-9 matchups. I mean, all of them, to be fair, but I like Oklahoma, and I still like Gonzaga over Oklahoma. Oh, I don't know what happened to my voice there. UCSB Creighton, I was sort of tempted to pick UCSB. I still like Creighton. I still think they're really good. And then this is kind of a popular 13-4 pick. Gabby, I think you have it too. I like Ohio over Virginia. Virginia is coming off sort of a COVID pause. I think they're only going to have like 1 day of practice before playing this game. Ohio just had a great run in the MAC tournament. Give me Ohio. I think their Cinderella run ends there when Creighton beats them, and then Gonzaga beats Creighton. Down to the latter half, I like Wichita State and Drake. I don't really care who wins this matchup. I like the winner of this matchup over USC. I think USC is I think you and I agree on this too, very beatable team. And, we have Pac-12 bias on the women's side. On the men's side, it's the complete opposite. I'm avoiding the Pac-12 teams like the plague. I am and you can see, I have VCU over Oregon. Kansas, I'm a little tricky about, and I still might change my mind on this depending on who wins Wichita State and Drake. But as of right now, I like Kansas over the winner of that team still. I'm still very iffy on Kansas, but the Big 12 has been really good this year. And I think all those teams in the Big 12 are great. I don't think they're as good as some of the teams in the Big 10, but we'll get to that. VCU over Oregon. This is a 10-7 matchup I really like in VCU's favor. Again, I'm not sold on any of the men's Pac-12 teams. And then Arizona's lone representative in the men's tournament, Grand Canyon, only to get smacked by Iowa. I'm so sorry, Grand Canyon University. So Iowa. And then, again, Wichita State Drake, that could still change between Kansas. I still like Kansas over the winner of Iowa over the winner of either of those. Give me Gonzaga, Iowa in the Elite Eight. On the flip side of that, we go to the South region. I'm not completely sold on Baylor either. I think they're really good, but I still have, as you can see, I still have them getting through. I like Wisconsin over North Carolina in a really close matchup. Big 10 biased, whatever. But I really like Wisconsin. North Carolina has been so hot and cold this season. I know it could be completely different when they get to March. I think Wisconsin's too much. I think they move the ball too fast for North Carolina, and I think a lot of Big 10 teams will do that for some of these matchups. And then Villanova, Gabby, I'm so sorry. It's been kind of rough. They've been hot and cold too. Give me Winthrop over Villanova. This is a 12-5 upset.
I'm just curious, how much knowledge do you have of Winthrop's basketball team?
Not a lot, but I know more about Villanova and how rough it's been. And I think when you get to March, as we said, anything can happen. And
That's true.
Villanova is just, I believe it will have like last 5 games or something, notable results. Okay. But I think Villanova's had somewhat of a rough end to the season.
Yeah.
But as you see the things said, their margin of error is really small. And I think Winthrop takes advantage.
There you go.
Excuse me. Purdue, I still think Winthrop loses Purdue. Baylor, Purdue. Give me Baylor. Purdue again. They've been off and on. Give me Baylor. I like Texas Tech, Utah State. This is a really tough matchup. I like Texas Tech, and same with Texas Tech, Arkansas. Arkansas is probably the SEC team I'm most sold on. But I still might change my mind between Arkansas and Texas Tech. Give me Arkansas. I think they lose to Ohio State on the flip side of that. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Virginia Tech, so Florida. So here, Elite Eight, Gonzaga, Ohio State make it out of these 2 regions to the Final Four. I'll try to go really quickly through these regions so we can get to Gabby's bracket. I could probably give or take 20 minutes. Obviously, Michigan. I mean, what do you want me to say? How could I not pick Michigan? And we'll probably talk more about that on tomorrow's show. I'll save it for tomorrow's show. But
spoiler alert, she has Michigan winning the national title. Spoiler alert,
sorry.
Just so we're clear.
LSU St. Bonaventure is a really good game. I like LSU still. I really like Georgetown. They're on such a hot streak, and I think it continues. I think they beat Colorado. I think they end up losing to Florida State and Michigan, Florida State in the Sweet 16. I really like BYU just because of how close it was to Gonzaga. I could completely miss on this, but I'm going for it. I think BYU beats the winner of Michigan State UCLA. Sorry, Gabby. And then I really like Texas too. Texas and Alabama are the most popular picks out of this region, which I get Texas more than Alabama. I like BYU over Texas. I actually have them making the Elite Eight. I like Maryland over UConn in a really tough matchup. And I am so tempted to pick Iona over Alabama, but I won't do it because I'm not sold on Alabama at all. I'm sorry. I watched the SEC championship game and they move that ball so slow and there's like no defense. I think they're going to meet a Big Ten team and just have like a rude awakening to how fast Big Ten teams move the ball around and how they guard you, because I don't think Alabama's seen that from any other team other than Arkansas, and they lost.
The best way that I could put it is you're like, I'm not going to pick them, but I'm not surprised if they win. Like, I'm not going to be shocked if Iona does do the, 15-2 upset in Florida Gulf Coast 2013 fashion.
Exactly. I'm really tempted. If Iona wins it, you heard it here first. Nicole's not that surprised. And I like Maryland over Alabama, as I said. I like BYU over Maryland in a really tough matchup. And then obviously Michigan over BYU. And then on the flip side of that, I really like Illinois. Illinois Loyola Chicago is going to be a really fun matchup with Sister Jean. I think Illinois is too much. Unfortunately, I don't think Loyola Chicago can have a Cinderella run with Illinois in its region. Tennessee, Oregon State. Sorry, Oregon State. I think your magical run ends here with Tennessee. And then Oklahoma State beats Liberty. I like Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's going to give Illinois a run for its money with Cade Cunningham. I'm really tempted to pick Oklahoma State in this matchup. I think could be one of the best matchups in the entire tournament if Illinois and Oklahoma State meet each other, purely because of Cade Cunningham. And I think that would be really fun. And Io and Kofi Cockburn could be really interesting. On the flip side, San Diego State, West Virginia. I like San Diego State over West Virginia. I haven't watched West Virginia all that much, but I really like what I've seen from San Diego State. I like Rutgers over Clemson in another 10-7 upset. And then Houston. I think Houston beats Rutgers because Rutgers has been just, I mean, people probably saw they got their ass handed to them. So Houston, San Diego State, I really like Houston. And then Illinois over Houston. Meaning my Final Four is somewhat Big Ten favorable. Michigan, Gonzaga, Ohio State, Illinois. And okay, let me go back to one point real quick about Michigan. I'll say more on this when we record, so today's Wednesday. This should be posted on Wednesday. Thursdays we record. The show will air on Friday on Blaze Radio. If Isaiah Livers returns for this Florida State game, I think Michigan is really dangerous from here on out. I do. And I think they could be, and he could return for the round of 32 game. But if he returns for the Florida State game or whoever they play there, I think everyone's in trouble. And everyone's doubting on Michigan. They're the least favorable number 1 seed. And I think that works in Juwan Howard's and Michigan's favor. So we got Michigan over Gonzaga in, I don't think it will be as close as people think it will be. I know that's the bias in me, but how could I not? I think Michigan and Illinois meet again. And I think Michigan proves why they were the true Big Ten regular season champs, because Illinois fans like to be really annoying about that. I like Illinois over Ohio State again. I think that will be a really good matchup. Big Ten tournament rematch. I like Michigan over Illinois, 81-77. It's a homer pick, but I'm sticking by it because how could I not? Go blue.
The kid from a suburb outside of Chicago, Illinois, who grew up in Michigan, picked Illinois and Michigan in the national title game. I love that storyline. That's a fun storyline to see the teams that you grew up watching potentially going all the way in the big dance. I love that storyline. I think if that comes out, we're gonna keep circling back, I think, to that as the tournament rolls along. If Illinois and Michigan can make it out, which they are obviously favored to make it out of both their regions, that's a storyline that I want to continue following. I want to get your reaction on all of it because I think it's fun. It's really fun. You don't get to see your teams very often at the very top, in that capacity. I'm gonna run through mine real quick, and Gonzaga, Norfolk State, Appalachian State. I don't know much about those two schools, so I think it's Appalachian State. I actually don't even know. Yeah. I'm picking Gonzaga. Jalen Suggs is really good at basketball. Oklahoma, Missouri. I'm up in the air on this one. I think Missouri makes it out. Creighton, UCSB. Going with UCSB because I think out of matchups that you could pick 12-5 upset, I think UCSB is right in that range. Creighton doesn't have the best defensive effort. UCSB, fun fact, they actually have Tayshaun Cherry's brother on their team. Or I think it's like Tayshaun Cherry's brother, like best friend or something like that. I think his name's Miles. So that's going to be kind of fun. Maybe you'll kind of see like some quote unquote like Sun Devil blood or whatever by extension in the tournament because our program isn't in the tournament. Virginia, Ohio. I have Ohio winning this one actually. There's a gal on Twitter that I follow. I think her name's Claire Greery. Greery. If I'm mispronouncing that, Claire, I'm sorry. But she's been providing some really interesting insight into Ohio, into the conference that they play in. Which conference is Ohio playing again? Why am I blanking on the name? The
Maction. Come on, Gabby.
Maction Conference. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, it's just MAC, but it's called Maction.
Yeah, the Maction Conference. I think 12 versus 13 in round of 32 is just a fun storyline as well. Ohio coming out of it, I think they technically beat what is literally technically the defending national champion, Virginia. Virginia doesn't have a lot of those players still on their team. Guys like people like Kyle Guy, he's in the league now, he's gone. So I think Ohio lights it up. They average almost 81 points per game. And then going down, Wichita versus Drake, Wichita/Drake. I have either of those teams beating USC. I don't see a lot from USC outside of Evan Mobley. I really don't. I don't see what other people might be seeing, putting them as a 6th seed. Kansas, Eastern Washington, I have the Jayhawks coming out of there. Pretty much self-explanatory. Oregon, VCU. I'm actually picking Oregon here. I know you said you're avoiding the Pac-12 like a plague, but I'm not going to bet against the Oregon Ducks. Iowa, Grand Canyon University. Unfortunately, the state of Arizona will not last very long in the NCAA tournament because GCU will not go any further than the round of 64. Moving on, of course, to Baylor, Hartford. I have Baylor winning. I don't know what Hartford is, but it's definitely not better than Baylor. North Carolina, Wisconsin. I have North Carolina winning that one. I'm not going to bet against Roy Williams, despite that North Carolina has been extremely inconsistent this entire year. Villanova, Winthrop. I poked fun at you for a little bit because I have Villanova in this one.
Yeah, I'm going so far. I mean, that's.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm struggling right here. Villanova, Ohio State. I might change it to Ohio State because I
mean, the fact that you have been beating Baylor though is like.
Yeah.
You're so proud of that.
I'm not betting against Jay Wright. Jay Wright's going to the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame this year. I'm not betting against that. Even though they lost Colin Gillespie for the season, I'm still not going to bet against them. Purdue, North Texas. I'll go with Purdue. Texas Tech and Utah State. I want to see Mac McClung make some noise in the tournament, so I'm going to pick Texas Tech there. Arkansas, Colgate. My toothpaste brand will not be upsetting Arkansas. So Arkansas will win. Florida, Virginia Tech, 7-10 matchup. I think VT has a really good shot in this one, actually. VT has like a better defensive effort. They're 4-0 against top 25 teams. In conference, they went 9-4. Yeah, I think VT has a very, very good chance at being one of the 7-10 upsets. Ohio State, Oral Roberts, I only hear about them during the NCAA tournament, which might be exciting. Maybe they will shock the world, but I have Ohio State winning in that one. Coming out, of course, from Texas Tech and Arkansas, I have Arkansas winning. Sorry, Mac McClung, your time ends in the round of 32. VT, Ohio State, I have Ohio State winning. Oregon, I have them beating Iowa in the Sweet 16, going on to the Sweet 16. Wichita/Drake versus Kansas. Kind of a hard game to predict because we don't actually know who's going to be there, but I think it'll be Kansas. The fact that they don't have a place where you can pick either Wichita or Drake, I feel like that's kind of a diss to those schools. Like, you can't like click for them to go on because like, what if Wichita State does win? What if you want them to go on and you think they'll go on to the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight? I don't know. I think that's a really weird matchup to watch out for.
And the bracket doesn't lock until like Friday night or something Friday before the round of 64 starts. So yeah, it is interesting.
Because like I firmly believe, based on Wichita State's like past history in the tournament, they could go on like not maybe a Final Four run, but like a Sweet 16 run. I think they could easily do that. If they pick up enough momentum and stuff. UCSB, Ohio, I have UCSB winning that one, and then they're gonna get smashed by Gonzaga. And all will basically be right with the world. I guess you could say. Gonzaga versus Kansas, and then I have Villanova beating Baylor. I don't know, but yeah, I think I'm going to change it so that Ohio State beats Villanova to go on to the Final Four. So coming out of this conference, I have Ohio State and Gonzaga in my Final Four. And then scrolling down to our bottom half in the East region, Michigan's going to win, probably. LSU, St. Bonaventure. I really struggled not to pick St. Bonaventure because my elementary school is named St. Bonaventure. So I really struggled with that one.
There's a lot of homerism in these picks, man.
There really is.
I thought I'd be bad.
Well, I didn't pick St. Bonaventure.
Well, I know. I'm just saying you were struggling too, and then you picked Villanova. Well, and not to mention what you're about to get to. Keep going.
I have Georgetown beating Colorado. I think Georgetown's on a hot streak. I have Florida State beating UNC Greensboro. If Florida State gets their guy back, gets their best player back, I don't think Georgetown makes it out in the round of 32. Like if they get him back in time. I have UCLA beating BYU. I think UCLA will make it out of there. I have Texas versus Abilene Christian. Probably going to change it, honestly, to Texas.
Actually, but the Abilene Christian over Texas, I've heard is somewhat of a popular pick. Not popular, but I've heard people do it.
It's not out of the realm of possible. Abilene Christian only gives up 60 points a game to their opponents. But my thing is they've only played against one top 25 team. So like they're going to get their butts smacked like in the face with Texas. Texas has played against 13 top 25 teams this year. Now, granted, it's not exactly the best record, but I mean, I struggle with picking an underdog like ACU when they've only played against one top 25 team. So not impossible, but like,
yeah,
I'm not picking it, but I'm not going to be surprised if it happens.
That makes sense.
UConn, Maryland, I have UConn winning. Alabama, Iona, I'm in the similar boat as you. I think Alabama might lose. I'm not going to be surprised if they don't, but I don't have the guts to pick 15/2. I have UConn beating Alabama then, and I have UCLA going to the Sweet 16, folks. Let's speak it into existence. It's probably not going to happen. My bracket will probably be destroyed, but it's okay. From there, I have Michigan eventually beating Georgetown, possibly Florida State. Depends on what happens with Florida State. I have Michigan versus UConn. And then on the other side, I have Illinois beating Drexel, Georgia Tech, and Cade Cunningham and Oklahoma State eventually getting all the way to the Elite Eight. Loyola Chicago, I don't see it this year. I would love for Sister Jean to go on to the Final Four run. I think that would be so fun. But I have Georgia Tech knocking them out right away. Texas and Oregon State, Tennessee and Oregon State. Oregon State's, it stops in the round of 64. I think Tennessee wins. Oklahoma State, Liberty University. I have Oklahoma State winning that one. I'm not going to bet against the possible number 1 overall draft pick. Fun little 6-11 matchup here. I have Syracuse beating San Diego State. I think Jim Boeheim is proven in March to make a massive impact. You look at the statistics too. I think Syracuse has a chance to do something really special in March, even though they only went 9-7 in conference play. They average more points per game than SDSU. SDSU does have a better defensive effort, but I think conference-wise, Syracuse comes from the better conference. So I'm picking the Cuse to upset in that one. I don't think that's a very popular upset pick, though. So if I'm wrong on that, not surprised. I have West Virginia beating.
Just real quick, I don't think it is either. I personally don't even think Syracuse should really be in the tournament. But I kind of like the pick over San Diego State. It'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah.
But yeah, keep going.
I have West Virginia actually really making noise in the tournament. Bob Huggins and Jordan McCabe he's their point guard. McCabe actually went viral when he was in junior high school. He's like our age. He's a junior. He went viral when he was in junior high school for being an incredible dribbler. And just an incredible basketball player. And so I think there's a good chance that West Virginia gets like literally all the way to the Elite Eight. Clemson versus Rutgers. I have Rutgers upsetting Clemson there. Houston versus Cleveland State. I have Houston winning that one. Between that 2-10 matchup, I have Houston going to the Sweet 16. I have West Virginia beating Syracuse. Oklahoma State versus Illinois, that number 1 seed. I'm with you. I'm struggling to bet against Cade Cunningham. If they can make it all the way to the Elite Eight, it's going to be because of him. So I have Illinois, West Virginia, Michigan, and UConn in the Elite Eight in this bottom half.
Okay. And then you got West Virginia over Illinois?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is honestly, the reason I have West Virginia beating Illinois is because I think West Virginia is poised to go on a run in the tournament. I think McCabe is ready to crack into, the national spotlight again. I think Bob Huggins is one of the more underrated coaches in college basketball. So they had some issues this year as well with like COVID protocols and stuff like that. But yeah, I think Illinois, I think their run stops in the Sweet 16.
And I think West Virginia is like a quieter 3 seed too. I think a lot of people are kind of not giving West Virginia a lot of attention, even though they're a 3 seed.
No, I don't think that. I think they're not giving them as much attention either. And I have UConn as well going to the Elite Eight, which a lot of people will probably be like, what? Because I don't believe in Alabama for one thing. I also have UCLA going to like the Sweet 16. I think I'm gonna be horribly wrong on that. Talk about a homer pick. Anyways,
You gotta go with it though.
Going up, of course, to the Final Four. I don't know why that didn't click, but I have Gonzaga in Michigan, and then I have Ohio State and West Virginia. I have Michigan actually winning it all over their rivals, Ohio State. 82-77.
All right. Well, I like it. I
You
certainly
agree
have
with
no
it?
complaints. I do.
You agree with it? I really do think, oh, Michigan. Yeah, my bracket's probably going to get destroyed, but that's okay. See, I believe that Michigan will win it all because coming from a conference like they're coming from, and I have this theory that good karma will eventually come back. And I think it's time that Michigan got some good karma because they've made it to the national title game so many times and they haven't won it all. When was the last time they won it all? I'm curious. Do you know?
19. It was a Fab 5 years. They haven't been a 1 seed since 91.
Wow.
And they haven't won since. Look it up. Off the top of my head, I can't think of the year. It's a 90s year. Or is it 88?
So we're looking up Michigan basketball national championships.
Is it 1988?
Let's see. NCAA tournament history. Michigan Wolverines. Does this tell us they've been to the Final Four? They've only won one national title in 1989.
89. Okay. I said 88.
So they've been to the Final Four 8 times. I think it's time that they win it all. I do. I think it's time, for them to make it happen with this group. Nicole, any last thoughts before we log off today? That was our Final Four special, folks. Woo. I hope you all enjoyed it.
And we ran through that in just over an hour. That was pretty good.
It was pretty good. We did both men's and women's basketball too.
Whew. Any final comments? You know what? I say this every year of trying not to get mad when my bracket gets busted, but I get mad anyway. I'm going to say it again for myself and for anyone watching. Try not to get mad and just enjoy the weirdest upsets and the weirdest teams making it to the Final Four, whatever, unless it's your team. Then you can be mad. Absolutely. But I'm going to say it and something whack is going to happen. I'm going to be so mad, but you know what? I'm going to enjoy it because it's back, because we actually have it this year. And for me, that is enough. Well, actually, Michigan championship would be enough. That would be great.
Plenty, yeah.
But
just to be clear,
folks, this year, we're grateful for it.
If Michigan wins it all this year, I'm not going to hear the end of it until probably next March Madness.
Well, you're not going to hear the end of it until the Lakers win the championship again. And then it's going to be both of us being super annoying on the internet.
It's great. And this is why we are such a special show on Blaze Radio. Of course, this is our special edition show. We're going to still have our weekly recording tomorrow where we're going to dive into all things March Madness, women's hoops, men's hoops, but we're also going to dive into some professional things as well. And the one thing I will say to the people, please enjoy March Madness because the amount of sacrifice people have to go through to actually make it happen, not just student athletes, but coaches, people working the event, referees, announcers, all those people are in a bubble right now in the middle of Indiana where basketball was first established. So there's a lot of people sacrificing a lot for this. So please enjoy it and don't yell at your TV when the call doesn't go right, because I don't think the ref cares that much what you think in, Southern California. They also
can't hear you.
Yeah, I say you as in me in Southern California because I'm going home in a week for a few days. So I'm probably going to be screaming at my TV on Saturday night, what the heck? Come on, UCLA! If UCLA still, I don't think UCLA is going to be in it at that point, but still.
It's okay. On the women's side. You'll have them on the women's side. It's okay.
That's true. I'll have them hopefully they'll be in the Elite Eight or whatever on the women's side. All right. For Nicole Pinter, I'm Gabrielle Ducharme. This has been a special edition of The Future is Female. We will catch you all on the airwaves on Friday, folks, and on this episode on YouTube very soon. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and may your brackets be ever in their favor.